Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performers Podcast. I'm your host, and today is going to be a returning guest from episode 86 and 90. You are going to absolutely love this guy. One of the smartest, Steve, I'm just amazed by you sometimes, the level of your intellect and your insights. So without further ado, let me give you a little background on Steve. Steve Robbins is the creator of GetItDoneGroups.com and host of Get It Done Guy podcast. He has been co-founder or initial member of several startups, including FTP Software and pre-public Intuit. He co-designed Harvard Business School's MBA program's foundational module, and is the graduate of both MIT and HBS. Dude, I couldn't even get into a local community college, so already I don't know why you agreed to come back on again.
Because I like you.
Oh,
and you have listeners who will listen. I mean, that's a rare thing in today's social media landscape.
There you go. And I took the bell curve down in most of my classrooms, so that was good too. I was well liked that way.
Yeah. Well, think of it as a public service.
I tell you, it just goes to prove that you don't need to be smart to succeed in life.
Sure.
I'll be the first one to tell you that.
I could talk on that for an hour and a half right there.
Fill us in a little bit before we start about the Get It Done podcast. I know Get It Done Guy podcast. Yeah. The official name is?
The Get It Done Guy's Quick and Dirty Tips to Work Less and Do More. It's part of the Quick and Dirty Tips Network and has been as high as the #3 podcast in all categories on iTunes at one point. And for about 10 years was pretty much a fixture in the business top 10. I honestly haven't looked in over a year, so I don't know if it still is. But it started because there was this amazing podcaster called Grammar Girl who taught grammar, but she did it in a really entertaining and engaging and fun way. And I wrote her a fan letter and I said, "Dear Grammar Girl," she had a little network. I said, "Dear Grammar Girl, if you ever want to have a business podcaster, I'd love to do it because you have great style and personality and community and you're awesome." And my letter got to her. She had sold her little network to Macmillan Publishing. And my letter got to her the same day they were having their very first meeting to decide who should their first new podcaster be. And the rest, as they say, is history, 587 episodes later.
That is absolutely amazing. It just goes to show, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to take that leap of faith that may have just ended up into the trash somewhere. But if you had not sent that, think about how different things would be. I mean, almost 600 episodes. How many years has it been going?
11
years. I mean, that was before podcasting was even podcasting.
Oh yeah. Well, it was the word podcasting had existed for about a year, I think. But who had ever heard of it? You know?
Amazing. And how many downloads over 11 years?
30, somewhere around in the neighborhood of 36 million, I guess.
36 million. Wow. Unbelievable.
So, if I only had $1 for every one of those downloads, he said wistfully.
But look at the exposure. I mean, I get phone calls all the time. People say, "Hey, I want to start a podcast." First question is why?
Yeah.
And then the second question is, if you're going to do it, as in anything in business, are you going to continue it? Or are you just going to be like most of the podcasts out there? They do 2 or 3 or 10 episodes, and all of a sudden, it's off the face of the earth.
Yeah. People don't understand how much work it is to really produce regular content that's engaging, that speaks to your audience, and frankly, that is produced at a particular quality level. I'm not going to say super high quality because I think a lot of people overinvest in production quality when they don't need to. Yeah. If you have high quality content, to be perfectly blunt, people will listen to very low quality production as long as they feel like they're getting a great value out of it. I, of course, at this point, strive for a high quality production as well, to the extent that I have control over that. But if you're going to do anything like that, anything like a podcast or even regular Instagram posting, if you're trying to build a following, you need to do whatever it is you're doing on a regular, predictable basis so people come to count on you. And that's a lot of work.
It is.
So you want to make sure that if you're doing it for business, that you understand how that's going to feed into your business. And again, I could talk for a long time on this because it's something we've addressed in a lot of different dimensions with the Quick and Dirty Tips Network, because all of the podcasters there have different motivations for being there, different things that they want out of the experience. And it's been really instructive to have 11 years worth of experience now, seeing what things work, what things don't, what works for what,
And it opens up so many doors. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that I have access to today simply because I asked them to come on the show. I would have never had the opportunity to just pick up the phone and said, hey, let's have a chat for 25, 30 minutes.
See, and there is why you're brilliant, because one of the things you clearly understand is your podcast, whether or not it's producing money for you, is giving you access. And that access can be used to build a professional community, a social community, to make all kinds of connections with people who otherwise wouldn't be exposed to you. And even if you just have them on your podcast, you have a unique name, right? Yep. Thor Conklin. I've remembered that name since the day that we were on our podcast, even if at times I haven't remembered why do I remember that name? Yeah. But if you were to reach out at any point, I would go like, yeah, right, you're someone from my past, right. Not sure who, but let's talk. So once you have used your podcast to bring someone on, now you have a connection to that person that even if it's just limited to that one interview, as long as you've given them some memory hooks and a good experience, you can use that as the basis for getting in touch later.
Yeah, I talk to people, young entrepreneurs all the time. I said, what's the number one piece of advice could you give me as a young entrepreneur? I said, really simple. The same advice I was given some 30 years ago. Your job will make you a living. Your Rolodex, or which in today's times, your contact list and your iPhone, will make you wealthy, will make you a fortune. That's the hope. You know. It really is. I mean, it's the people that you know, and you can get into their circles by providing value, becoming memorable, and truly go in figuring out what you can provide, not extract. That'll serve you for a lifetime. Yes. I mean, again, so actually, what do we want to make sure we cover while we're here? Because I'm thinking, boy, just based on what we've said so far, we could talk about podcasting, we could talk about business models, we could talk about how to maintain relationships over a multi-decade career. We could even talk about unexpected things about networking, like your network ages out. No one told me that. So you're going to keep us out of the rabbit holes? This is really going to be a challenge today. Yes. Well, the problem is this. There's so many rabbit holes, and they're all so interesting. Every time you and I talk, there's always something that we end up going down. But we want to talk about, if I'm a mind reader here, we want to talk about the getitdonegroup.com. Get It Done Groups with an S. With an S. Get It Done Groups. Great job, by the way. I love how you start with start finishing. Because if you go to my website, it says something similar, and that is execution is the only thing that matters. You know, in today's environment, I see so many young entrepreneurs and older entrepreneurs for that matter, spending a lot of busy time learning and just going around and around. They're very busy, but they're not finishing what they start. And you mentioned something very interesting is that you can't rely on willpower. So you and I are absolutely the same mindset here. Tell us a little bit, if it's not about the willpower, what is it? And how do we start getting things done? Sure. Can I tell a story? Of course. Where this came from. So I've been in business for a long time. I'm way older than I look, for those of you who don't know me. And one of the things I noticed with my most recent, with a project that I started in late 2017, I was working on a project, and I noticed I didn't seem to be making a whole lot of progress on it. However, this was a project I had done before, and I knew that I could get it done in under a week, and yet I was going on 3 months of not having it done. So I said, okay, it's time for me, Mr. Productivity Expert, to take a good hard look at what it is that's going on in my life, because clearly I know for a fact from experience I can do this thing in a week, and so far I'm on week 12 and still haven't made progress. What's up? And I started analyzing what was happening, and I realized that there were a number of ways that I was getting derailed on a regular basis. I work alone from my apartment, so I don't have an office or that kind of structure. And I realized I call them the nefarious 9. There are 9 ways that people get derailed from doing things. And in my case, the biggest one is I felt like I needed a boss. I needed somebody to make sure that every week I was laying out goals that related to my
my longer term goal, which was finishing this project, and then making sure that what I was doing on any given day actually was related to those goals. I call that alignment. That means that your weekly goals are related to your 12-week goals, your daily goals are related to your weekly goals, and frankly, whatever you're doing in any given hour is related to your daily goals. And that sounds obvious on one hand, except our brains seem to work at different timescales, and it differs by the person. But I have found that some people naturally think in terms of the next few hours, some people think in terms of the next few days, some people think on month-long terms, and it doesn't necessarily mean, if you're thinking in terms of your 3-month goal, that doesn't mean that you are correctly dividing that into monthly goals or weekly goals, because unless you are able to think at both levels. So I figured out for me, the things I was doing on a daily basis were disconnected from the 3-month goals. So my 3-month goal was to get this project up and running as a business, but my weekly goal might be something like work on the website by evaluating a bunch of different website vendors. Well, guess what? If I don't have a product, evaluating websites just a teensy bit premature, right? Unless I'm planning on putting the website up to do market testing, but that was not the case here.
But more fun.
Yes, more fun, more engaging, the kind of thing that I can twiddle with for hours. So what was happening is that I was getting out of alignment. I was also spending way too much time on Facebook and a few other things. So I mentioned to this friend, I said, boy, I need a boss. I need someone to do all of the useful parts of what a boss does, which is set goals with me, which that's actually not a big deal. It's just someone to say, what are your goals? And I can figure them out myself. But what are your goals? And then to check in with me regularly to make sure that I was reaching them. And then, and this is an important piece, and then to call me out if I wasn't making progress. Because I was 3 months into what should have been a 1-week project. And it had taken me 3 months to realize that I wasn't making any progress because I didn't have any measurable milestones set up. I was just kind of going, and I'd come into my office and I'd sort of do some stuff. And it was only when the amount of time was way too big to ignore that I realized I was behind. So I said to a friend, boy, I need a boss. And my friend looked at me and said, oh my God, he was also self-employed. Said, oh my gosh, I need a boss too. And I told the story to a third friend of ours. And she said, I need a boss. Can we all be bosses? And I said, well, why don't we all be each other's boss? And then I mentioned this to a fourth friend, and my fourth friend said, I need a boss too. This time, even my marketing brain would take notice. I'm not the world's best marketer, at least behaviorally. I'm pretty good at strategy, but not great at execution in the marketing realm. And but even my marketing execution brain said, absolutely. That sounds like a great idea. Go to my website today after 2:00 and you can sign up for a Get It Done group. And that was literally how it came to be, because I realized that it was I was running into this same set of issues, which is if you make an appointment with yourself, you may or may not ever keep it. If you make an appointment with someone else, you'll almost certainly show up. I mean, I left lunch, I had a late lunch today and I left early to come back and do this recording. If this was something I was recording and then sending you, yeah, maybe I would have gotten back in time, maybe not. So what Get It Done guys do, Get It Done groups do, is they harness 3 major things that seem to be at the root of what causes a lot of us to not get things done. One is focus. Deciding so Get It Done groups are time limited, and I recommend this with any goal setting process. It's only 12 weeks, so for those 12 weeks, choose a top priority. Yes, you will have other things in your life that need to get done, but for 12 weeks, choose a top priority. And what a top priority means, it means that when there is a clash between 2 different things, the one that you decide you're always going to choose is your top priority. It doesn't mean you can't do other things. It just means that when things collide, you consistently choose the same one, and that's the one that's your top priority. So you choose a top priority for 12 weeks. And then when other things interfere, unless they're life-threatening or whatever, you basically say, okay, I'm going to finish the work that I need to do today on my one big thing, my focus priority, and then I will go to the other stuff. And if you do that consistently, what it means is you will make consistent progress on your major focus point every single day. So focus is one element. Second element is alignment, which is what I was talking about before, which is if you take steps to make sure that your daily to-do list is in fact the right set of to-dos that are going to help you reach your weekly goals, and that your weekly goals are the right set of to-dos that are going to help you reach your 12-week goals, then you can forget about your 12-week goals and you can forget about your weekly goals and just concentrate on the daily goals, and you will automatically make progress. And then at the end of the 12 weeks, you can stop and reassess where you are, etc. But keeping the alignment is a really important piece. So far we have focus on one thing and alignment between short and long term. And then the third piece is execution. And the number one execution mechanism that I use in Get It Done groups is accountability. I was an executive coach for about 15, 16 years. And boy, I did all this work with people. I know you do work with Tony Robbins. I did NLP work with people. I did belief work. I helped them do states of excellence, all this stuff to get them going when they were stuck. And then one day I'm talking to one of my clients, and I said, have you written the letter yet? That he was working on a very difficult to write letter. And I said, have you written the letter yet? And he was like, no, I've been procrastinating it. And at this point, we had done everything in my psychological toolbox. And I said, well, dude, you know what? I happen to know you have an hour blocked out on your calendar right now. So since I know for a fact you have an hour blocked out on your calendar, get back to me in 20 minutes with the first draft of the letter. And he was like, what? And I said, write the letter right now. First draft. You don't have to send it yet. In fact, you can't send it yet. I want to look at it first. But go write it. And he's like, that's the scariest thing anyone's ever asked me to do. I said, yes, just do it. So we hung up. 20 minutes later, he had a first draft. We got into a final draft and he sent it out. That was it. And in that moment, I sort of realized, okay, the power of community and of doing things with people is actually stronger than the power of all the other stuff I know. And I know a lot of stuff about psychological things and hypnosis and motivation and all this. So Get It Done groups, that's the execution mechanism, is we provide accountability at every one of those time frames. We provide 12-week accountability, we provide 1-week accountability, we provide daily accountability, and we provide hourly accountability if you need it to really get through something that you're having trouble getting through. And all of those mechanisms, every aspect of this is optional except for the daily accountability. That piece everyone participates in. And the basic idea behind it is that you take whichever accountability pieces you need, and those are the ones that you participate in. And with things like the daily accountability, you're going through, remember I mentioned before, you have a daily to-do list, which is specially designed to synchronize with your monthly list, which is designed to synchronize, or your weekly list, which is designed to synchronize with your 12-week list. And as you're going through your daily check-in, you've got a live human being on the other end, and you're actually measuring yourself. You're giving yourself a rating on how much progress you've made, and if you're putting in the effort you need to be putting in on each one of the items that's important to you. Because you have another person there, their job is to look for where you have 3 low scores in a row on 3 consecutive days. And instead of doing the stupid mistake that I did, which was waiting 3 entire months before recognizing that your 1-week project was 12 weeks overdue, 3 days of no progress or low progress on a particular area, and your accountability buddy goes, hey, I notice you've been making low progress. What's up? And you can immediately, if you can't figure out something to do with your accountability right then and there to get going, you can bring that to the weekly community call, or you can escalate it to me just by email, and we figure out, okay, what's going on where you've been stuck, and how can we get you unstuck? And I have what I call the nefarious 9, which is the nefarious 9 obstacles. And basically almost always you're stuck because you don't have a plan, so you don't know what to do next. You're procrastinating because you're getting distracted. And I define a distraction as essentially an interruption that comes from yourself, like, oh, look, a squirrel. Then there's interruptions that come from outside. That's when your schmoopy knocks on the door and says, sweetie pie, I just baked a cake. And as much as you love your schmoopy and you love your schmoopy's cakes, it's the middle of your workday, you're trying to get something done. But of course, schmoopy always comes first, that's, as anyone in a long-term relationship knows. So that's an interruption. Then there's also perfectionism. I once was talking to a gentleman who'd been working on an online course for 5 years, and he had never even had anyone go through it because he was still busy honing the details. And I was like, dude, you could have released the course and iterated it 10 times, assuming it took 6 months to iterate, 10 times in the time that it was taking him to do just the first version. Perfectionism. That's one of my personal rabbit holes as well. Fear and emotional attachment. Sometimes you're not doing something because you're either afraid of the consequences or you're afraid of the effort that it will take to do it. Thrashing. Thrashing is when you have two number one priorities. So whenever someone says, our top priority is, and then they give you a list, what they have just told you is they don't have a top priority. So chances are really good that they're not making the progress they want because they don't know how to resolve conflicts. And so they're procrastinating item B because they're working on A, but they're also worrying while they're working on A that, oh my gosh, I'm not getting stuff on B done, but then they're working on B. And now that they're working on B, they're thinking A got stalled now. What am I going to do about A? And I call that thrashing. Then there's forgetting, which is you didn't do something because you literally just forgot and you need to be reminded. And then there's you're not making progress because you're not aligned with your long-term goals. So in fact, oh yes, or you don't have long-term goals. So those are the nefarious 9. And if you know which one of those is the problem, the answer, I mean, there are some standard tools that anyone who's been a coach or anyone who has just done a lot of their own personal productivity, you can come up with, right? If the problem is you don't have a plan, the answer is sit down and make a plan. Right.
I got a couple observations here, and then I've got a couple questions. So, it's interesting you mentioned about, putting something off and, the fear or the stress of that just keep building and building and then having a deadline, hey, it's got to be done in 20 minutes. What's interesting is that while you're having difficulty in one area of life, work, doesn't matter, that contraction, that stress that is built up affects everything else. And as soon as you do it, everything else just gets better. Not only did that one piece go, but it's almost like you're unplugging the dam, and now your energy is able to flow much better than it was before. And I wanted to talk about that because I'll talk also about energy, and I'm always about getting to the root problem. And if we're not executing, why aren't we executing? And why is that? Why is that? And many times I've come back to energy, which of course is either emotional energy or physical energy. What have you found with working with clients of how energy plays a role, either emotional or physical?
Boy, I don't actually think as much in terms of energy unless it's something that's clearly very physical, like someone isn't getting enough sleep, in which case we take that as its own issue, which is, okay, you're not getting enough sleep. Yeah. Now let's solve that problem. This maybe is because I'm one of these people who's just like totally caught in my head, and every now and then I remember, oh, I have a body, yay. that body needs to be cared for. Like I'm sitting in a position right now that was cutting off.
But your energy level, every time we've interacted, has always been at a peak state. I mean, you just have, you're on.
Yes. Well, keep in mind, I also have 35 years of experience with NLP, so I've learned how to do a lot of.
But not all our clients had that, and many times they kind of go through. They're loading up on coffee in the morning. They're crashing after lunch because of their high carb, high sugar intake, and they just literally don't have the energy to do what's necessary.
So there's two answers to your question.
Yeah.
One for me as a coach, and one for Get It Done groups as an execution vehicle. So for me as a coach, I really subscribe to the book The Power of Full Engagement by, I think it's Tony Schwartz. And it looked at how do top performing athletes maintain their level of performance. And it ended up being all about energy, and in particular about how to balance energy exertion with energy repletion. I'm not sure what the right word is. With restoring.
Okay.
Replenishing, that's the word.
Yeah.
So the idea is that high performing athletes have a lot of really focused downtime in their schedule. And it may be, I forget which, there was some tennis player they were talking about who after any particular round, as this guy turned around and walked back to, I don't know anything about tennis, as he walked back to wherever it is they stand when they start the next ball.
The end line? Yeah.
Yeah. He would drop into a super concentrated, focused relaxation state. But only for a few seconds, but it was enough that he was continually recharging himself. And this book recommends a particular cycle of recharging and energy replenishment. And I have heard, although not directly read, that there's been a lot of subsequent research that all comes down to the same thing, which is essentially people need a lot more recharge time than they think they do. And the number that I've heard is if you spend 10 minutes every hour doing something that is replenishing, that sounds like a lot. I'm like 10 minutes every hour. Geez Louise, that's
how am I going to get everything done? I got
right. That's an hour and a half a day. But apparently what happens is you are so much more productive in the other 50 minutes that it more than makes up for the replenishment time. Now, the sneaky part about get it done groups, I am a big fan of designing structures that accomplish multiple goals at the same time, but you don't necessarily tell people that. They just wonder, why did I do this one simple thing and I got all of these different results? One of the things that's at the cornerstone of Get It Done groups is a structure I did not invent. It was invented by Thomas Leonard, largely the creator and the commercializer of the field of life coaching. And I call it a do-it day. And a do-it day is a super simple format where you meet at regular intervals to commit to what is the next chunk of work you're going to do, and then you go off and do it, and you come back and report on it. And it turns out that when people do a do-it day, they have the most productive day they have ever had in their work history.
Yeah, the day before vacation.
Yeah, and the question is, what makes them so unbelievably productive? Like, it seems like such a simple structure. Why is there this mysterious exponential productivity boost to them? And there's a bunch of reasons for that. But one of the things that I've never admitted before, but you asked the right question, is since you're stopping every single hour and you're hopping on a video call and you're all reporting out to each other, what that's doing is that is giving you an explicit and enforced five plus minute break every single hour away from the high intensity stuff you're doing. And in fact, usually it's a complete mode shift because people are doing work that involves either writing or being at their computer or thinking about things or prospecting where they're like deeply ingrained in it. And when you switch to one of these check-ins, your brain has to go someplace totally different. Now it's people interaction. Now you're all talking about how to help each other make progress, et cetera, but only for a couple minutes. And then you get back into your main thing. So what's happening is the do-it day is in fact enforcing this idea of intermittent recharge time that's happening every single hour, so that during the time that you're not doing the check-in, you're in really kind of a hyper-productive state and making a lot more progress than you would otherwise. But don't tell them it's a secret.
I won't tell them the secret. Well, no, I will tell them the secret.
Okay.
Yesterday was the Super Bowl, and an average football play lasts 6 seconds. So you think they're out there, just nonstop, just completely focused, but it's 6 seconds of pure adrenaline, focus, effort, and then it's over. Then you walk them back. Good distinction there. And if I look at my schedule, I think I do have a tendency, of kind of going back to back, jumping from one to the other. And one thing that I think is worth pointing out too is that so much productivity is lost by jumping from different things. Even if it's an email, people ask me all the time, I said, how many times a day do you check email? I said, 0. I stopped checking email. I process it 3 times a day because I don't go in just to kind of look and go, oh yeah, because what happens is you end up spending just a minute, a few seconds, and then it's on to something else, and then nothing kind of gets finished. So I love this kind of short little sprints of, hey, buckle down 50 minutes, hit it hard, have accountability connected to it. I want to ask you a question about that too with the group.
Yeah.
Is the accountability one-on-one, or is it accountability to a larger group? And then is the group moderated by somebody on your team, or is it kind of a self-managed group?
So all of the above, actually. Different instances of the accountability are done differently. So the daily accountability is you and an assigned accountability buddy, and it's just the two of you going over a checklist that we've designed specifically for your situation, so that this is the checklist that's going to get you where you want to go. So that one's done just one-on-one. The do-it days are done in a group, usually of 5 to 15 people. So with the do-it day, you have a whole group watching you, and we also have a weekly community call, which is similarly a group activity. Do-it days are facilitated by me at the moment, but as the Get It Done groups, this is a new business, so I'm just starting to build it. As Get It Done groups grow, I am planning on shifting the responsibility of that to the participants, so that part of being part of a Get It Done group is you choose one day during the time that you're signed up where you will be the facilitator of the Do It Day. And honestly, I think that's a really useful thing for people just as a learning experience, because part of being a good facilitator of this is you have to keep things highly focused. And even though people will be really, really tempted to editorialize, to talk, and to tell chatty stories, you need to keep them going. if you've got that skill and you can facilitate a do it done day, you can use that same skill in many other places in life, and it's very useful. And then there's the community calls, which are, it's me and currently whoever wants to show up. So we can get anywhere from 3 people, I guess, at the smallest. And we've had as many as I think 15 on one. And with the community call, that's facilitated, and it's facilitated so everyone reports on certain aspects of what they're doing and certain progress measures, and then we segue into more of a free form. Does anybody have something they want the group to help with? And that can be more of a back and forth brainstorming. Someone might say, wow, I've been dealing with this really difficult client and I just cannot figure out how to
fire,
or how to fire, or if to fire. And the conversations can be very wide ranging. So that it might end up being a conversation about, gee, how much of your business is concentrated in one client, and maybe you should be trying to diversify your client base. It might end up being how to fire a client. It might end up being, because in the course of conversation, maybe we discover this client also hasn't paid you. And it might end up being a conversation of, why do you value a client who's not actually delivering on their end of the relationship, but who is sucking up your time and resources? So even though it may start as a productivity and execution issue, a lot of times those conversations can end up getting into all kinds of other issues, business issues, personal ability and skill issues, interpersonal stuff. We just had one a couple of weeks ago where we ended up getting into an entire discussion on the role of identity in your career and how you think of who you are and how that affects the things that you're competent at and the things that you aren't. And I would never have imagined it would go there, but it did. It was a fabulous conversation.
What's interesting is that I get a lot of questions around, or a comment, I should say. I just don't know what to do. And I think so many business owners, especially younger ones or newer ones, think that us older business owners have all the answers, and it's completely false. I mean, it's just simply, when we don't know what to do, we just pick one. We have no idea if it's going to work. We just pick what we think might work, and if it doesn't, we very quickly pick the next one. And it doesn't look like we've actually hit the floor, because we're making that next decision. It's like, all right, that one didn't work, great, make another one. But there's no hesitation in trying new things and just keep moving that momentum forward. It's kind of like leaning. If you were on a sled going 100 miles an hour, it's kind of hard to fall forward because the wind is hitting you in the chest.
Right.
But when you're standing still, all you got to do is lean a little bit forward, right? You're going to go right on your nose.
Well, and I would say, by the way, to that thing, I think one of the hardest things, and I don't know if it's I really genuinely just don't know if this is a skill that's even learnable. One of the hardest things is how to make the distinction between when you should try something else and when your fundamental idea isn't working.
Yes.
You should abandon it.
Yes, and that's a great distinction. And my comments were more defined on the little things. Those little teeny things. Should I do this burgundy color or should I do the other burgundy color?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. That I haven't figured out an answer to that. When
neither have I.
When do you throw up the flag that says I quit, and when do you throw up the flag that says, all right, this is not going to go anywhere? That's such a difficult decision.
And by the way, for people listening, it's very important to know that Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, at one point just wanted to sell it for $1 million and be done with it, right? And now they're multi-billionaires. Yeah. But understand that what that means is they did not have deep insight that this was the next $1 trillion idea. They did not actually know how they were going to make this thing big. At one point, they were just like, we just want out of it. Now, lucky for them, they didn't get out of it. But we like to rewrite history saying that people who are immensely successful are these unbelievably skillful, phenomenal superhumans. And this is, by the way, this is a very American trait. Apparently, people in other countries are much more willing to say, you know what, there was a lot of luck and a couple of inheritances involved. Yeah. And it's important when you're the one who's doing the thing and you aren't Bill Gates yet, or choose your favorite multi-billionaire. It's important to understand that most of those people had no idea they were going to end up where they are now. And now that they're there, they like to take complete ownership of it and paint themselves as grand visionaries. But there were hundreds of people who had precisely the same vision as Bill Gates. He happened to have a mother who was on a board of directors with the chairman of IBM. And so when they were looking for a new operating system, Gates got considered. And by the way, he bought the first version of MS-DOS from someone else. He didn't even write it himself. So, without that one tiny little detail of mommy's on the same board as chairman of IBM, no matter what a good programmer and business person he was, he might be very successful. He might have, millions of dollars, but he probably would not be the third richest man in the world or whatever he is at this point.
And a lot of the businesses that start, they decide to do one thing, and then they end up pivoting, and all of a sudden end up in a completely different market, doing a completely different product and service. You've got to be flexible and listen to what the market's telling you.
Yeah. One of my biggest things, if you want to talk about advice to give young entrepreneurs, man, this one probably screwed me over for at least 10 years. And I'm not kidding about that. I probably lost 10 years of my life to this one, is the distinction between what people need and what they want. And it turns out, yes, what they want enough to pay for. It turns out I am extraordinarily good relative to most people at figuring out what people need. Now, this makes me a great one-on-one coach, because somebody comes to me and says, oh, I need help losing weight. And I say, tell me about your situation. They do. And I walk away going, I don't know why they think they need to lose weight. What they need to do is learn how to touch type or whatever. I mean, a lot of times my brain comes up with something very different. I teach them how to touch type, transforms their life. They lose the weight as a byproduct. Everything's wonderful. However, so I knew what they needed. So in an actual coaching situation, that's very powerful. In a marketing and sales situation, and if you're an entrepreneur, your initial job is marketing and sales, knowing what someone needs is almost unnecessary. What you need to know is what they want. Because if a person comes to me and says, what I want is weight loss, even if I know what they need is touch typing, they're not going to buy touch typing from me. Right. They're only going to buy weight loss. So it took me about 10 years to figure out, the reason that when I have a marketing conversation with someone that a lot of times it doesn't go anywhere is because I go ahead and diagnose it, point out to them that they need touch typing, and say, I don't do weight loss. And since what they want to buy is weight loss, they go, oh, okay, another time then. And then they go home and take touch typing lessons because, that nice Stever person suggests I take touch typing, and it transforms their life. But I don't end up being the one who benefits from any of that because, so it's really important to understand both what they need in terms of actually delivering a solution to them, but also what they want. So actually, I'm going to bring this right back to Get It Done groups, because I did a survey of 200 people a couple years ago. I gave away 200 free coaching appointments, and I asked people, I said,
I remember when you did that.
Yeah, this took a lot of time. And I said, what do you want? Because that will tell me what they want. That was their presenting problem. But then I had a coaching appointment with them at which time I figured out what they really needed.
Yeah.
And it was like 20% of the people said what they wanted was time management. Those were the words. They said, I want time management. However, what they actually needed was incredibly different from person to person. One person had a disabled child, and the reason that they had so much trouble with time management is because they had to spend 10 hours a day caring for a disabled child. Another person had a boss that had given them too many things to work on, et cetera, et cetera. And it sounds like if you look at it solely from the can I give people what they need perspective, then after doing that analysis, I would go, well, there's nothing here. There's nothing that I can give people because even though they all are saying they want the same thing, in order to deliver that, given how different everyone's situation is, it's almost impossible because the person who needs to learn how to deal with a disabled child isn't really going to want to sit through how to deal with your boss and vice versa. So what I've come to realize is people want time management because they want to get things done. So Get It Done groups incorporate almost a meta strategy, which is the strategy to keep you moving. And then within that keep moving, you need to figure out for your situation, okay, my issue is that I have a disabled kid, so I need to keep moving around creating a whole support structure for myself. Or I have a crappy boss, I need to keep moving around the ability to talk back to people in authority and to say no without also burning my bridges, whatever. But it's a very powerful lesson. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, it can take a lot of time. I would say not the majority, but a good part of the time that I spend with clients is really just getting to the root issue of what they really need. Because sometimes it'll take weeks or months because they really don't understand what they really need, what they really want. They have a kind of a surface level, but underneath that, it's like, I want to make more money. Why do you want to make more money? And what about, why is that important? And they just keep thinking that, and all of a sudden you just find out it's like, well, I was raised poor, and I just said I would never do that. Not having, it was like, oh, I was like, all right, so there's kind of the root. All right, and so it's important to raise money or make more money because of X.
Right. If you are you familiar with Byron Katie?
Yeah.
Okay, so I took one of her workshops, and she was talking about people who want to make more money, and that's never the need.
No.
Ever. I mean, that's
what, on paper. Yeah.
Right. That's what people think they need. And she did a piece of work with somebody that I'll never forget, because that person came up on stage and said, "Oh, I want to make more money." And she's like, "Well, what'll you do with the more money?" And that person was like, "Oh, I'll get a big house with a beautiful view and a nice plush couch and a 60-inch LCD screen TV." And she was like, "Well, how big is your TV now?" And he was like, "Well, it's 24 inches. She's like, "Okay, so you need to get a couple of those to make the 60 inches." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "How about your current couch? Is it comfortable?" He's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, so it's kind of like a step up to get the nice couch." She's like, "Oh yeah." Like, "And how about your house?" Like, "Oh, well, the house is it big enough for you and your spouse, whatever?" It's like, "Yeah." Basically, she was like, "Okay, so you were prepared to sacrifice the next 20 years of your life and all of your relationships so that you can get one upgrade in a couch, a flat screen TV, and a better view, which you're never going to look at anyway because you're going to be working success." She's like, "Really? Like is it actually worth orienting your entire life around if that's what it means to you?"
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, "Yeah, I guess I actually could even get out a credit card if I really wanted those things and buy them all, because they're not that expensive in the grand scheme of things."
Yeah, but it'll start to screw you up if you believe that the bigger house will give you more love. It'll make you feel like you're enough. I mean, it's really interesting how the mind works and how it can not support us at times. So yes. you and I could keep going on and on. I know you have another call that you need to
wow,
jump
I do.
on.
This has gone by very, very fast.
It always does. I want to ask you one quick question, and I want to hand over the mic to you and tell the audience how to get in touch with you. But you really created this business for yourself. What's the biggest benefit or change that you have seen in your productivity as a result of setting this up?
Oh, wow.
Or productivity or life.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it has to be the focus piece, that I have just made really extreme progress. I have had a number of individual days where I just took a project and moved it from here to here, and that was a distance that I would never have been able to do without the support of a group like this. My Achilles heel is that I get easily distracted because I have a lot of ideas and I like to follow up on those ideas and do this and that and the other thing. And for that kind of personality, which is my kind, what this has really helped me do is keep pulling myself back, and I add all of those nice distractions to my someday list, and then of course, when I look at that someday list 6 weeks later, I'm like, wait, why did I even want to follow that particular distraction? That's ridiculous. Like, the one that I did got me way far.
I have a file in Evernote. It's my S&M file. Someday, maybe.
Yeah. The one that tortures you.
Actually it doesn't torture me, because here's the thing. It's captured. And
right.
When I look back, I review that maybe every 6 months. Most of the things I put in there just aren't high priorities and just kind of get deleted after time. But at least it feels good knowing that it's captured somewhere. I don't need to keep it in my mind.
A lot of these to-do systems, like the Getting Things Done by David Allen, says every week you should do a review of your system. And of course, no one ever does that. Yeah. I decided I needed to do that. And of course, if I need to do it, I'll just make that part of Get It Done groups, and then it will happen automatically for me and everyone else. So now every Friday, we have one of the hours that we have on Friday. Again, if people want to do it, is we all get together and we just go through and do the task list review. We review our someday maybe list and see, is there anything on someday maybe that we want to transfer to our current list, or that is no longer a someday maybe. Maybe it's something we've decided we don't want anymore. And the first time we did this, it took for me, it took like 2 hours just to sort through everything. And but it turns out when you actually do that on a weekly basis, you get caught up with it, and then your someday maybe list really is just the stuff that's important to you, and like it's kind of a cool feeling. So if you don't do that, I recommend it. It's doing a weekly task review and someday maybe review and project list review. Really, it's just cleaning out the deadwood. And it's a big pain in the butt the first time, or maybe the first couple times. But once you're into the cycle of doing it, because everything's already cleaned up for the most part in 1 week, it doesn't get too out of date. So.
Just decluttering in general. I just redid my pantry. The pantry. You know how much better I feel because my pantry is actually organized and clean?
You have a pantry.
I have a pantry. That's where we put the grocery stuff. But, it was a mess before. But who would have thought of cleaning out the pantry and just getting that organized and decluttered has rippling effects all the way through everything else in your life. I know that sounds stupid. I don't know why that is, but it just is. You could probably explain that, but you don't have time to explain it. Explain to the audience how they can get in touch with you.
All right. You can get in touch with me. My coaching website is steverrobbins.com, STEVERROBBINS.com. My Get It Done Groups website is getitdonegroups.com. And that's where Get It Done Groups live. And then my podcast, you can go to itunes.com/Get It Done Guy. And that will take you to the iTunes page. It's also on Spotify, and I don't even know what all the platforms are. It's basically any podcast platform out there.
It's there.
Just search for Get It Done Guy. You'll find me. Yep.
Steve, always a pleasure having you on the show. And a matter of fact, I just realized that after this, I'm going to have to chase that squirrel. And that squirrel is touch typing. I have no idea what touch typing is. All I know is you've mentioned it about 4 or 5 times and said it'll change your life. So I'm going to start Googling touch typing, figure out what it is. Okay,
well, in that case, wait a minute. So I have to make a pitch for touch typing and speed reading.
Done speed reading. But go ahead.
Okay, if you've done speed reading. Basically, if you have a new economy job where you spend a lot of your time writing and reading, if you want to speed your life up across the board, learn how to type faster. And that's what touch typing is. That's the ability to type without even looking at the screen and just be able to do it automatically so that you can, you can't type as fast as you can think just because you can't move your fingers that fast. Yeah. But, I could type at my peak in 7th grade on a manual typewriter, I surpassed 70 words a minute. Wow. And what that means is, given everything else being equal, if you and I sit down to write an article and you only type 35 words a minute, I'll be done in half the time. And that's not a small advantage when you're talking about most of our jobs require tremendous amounts of typing. It's a skill. You have to learn it. It's not necessarily fun or pleasant to learn, but boy, is it worth it. And then the same with speed reading. If your job involves a lot of reading and reading off a screen is still reading, then the faster you can read, the faster you'll be able to get that part of the job done with so that you can go on to the part where you're really adding value, which is the thinking part. So touch typing that's what touch typing is.
Now I got to put a plug in for photo reading. Have you ever done it?
I have not. I've heard of it and I've been skeptical.
You should be. It starts off at reading the book upside down and backwards.
Okay.
It's the weirdest thing, especially when you're in public. It's upside down and backwards. It's about you very quickly go through it, similar to speed reading, but it's actually you're just taking a mental picture of each page. And when you reverse it and put it upside down, the brain's like, that's kind of weird, and actually has a stronger connection to it. You eventually end up reading it the correct way. But photo reading, I think you would find it very fascinating.
Interesting. Okay, so we'll look that up, but when people walk away from this, just remember getitdonegroups.com, and we'll discuss photo reading other times.
Excellent. I love having another host of another podcast.
Yes, pleasure. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Yep.
Have a great one.
You too.